Hi, I'm Victoria Pelletier. I'm a corporate executive, an author, a public speaker, a multi-potentialite. And I've just had a phenomenal conversation with Kim Sorrelle, and I can't wait to share it with you all. Thank you.
Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here. You are going to be so happy you are here. I'm Kim Sorrelle. I'm a writer, I'm a speaker. I get to do a lot of fun things in life, but my favorite thing to do is to meet people, and I get to meet some extraordinary people. I've so been looking forward to today and introducing you to this extraordinary human being. Victoria, she's a TEDx speaker, she's a speaker otherwise beyond that. She's been in the corporate world. She's done so much in life. She helps people in so many different ways. And her story is gigantic and relatable, unfortunately, for a lot of people. But she's one of the most, if not the most resilient human beings I've ever had a chance to meet. And so I just want to get going with this. Victoria, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here, Kim.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. So I want people to get to know you and understand this beautiful blonde that they're now seeing, what it took to get from where you were to where you are today. So I'd love to hear about 8-year-old Victoria.
Ah, 8-year-old Victoria. So So 8-year-old Victoria had already learned a lot about resilience. So my why, my drive stems from, unfortunately, a very traumatic early childhood. So I'm born to a drug-addicted teenage mother who was exceptionally abusive to me. I went in and out of the child welfare system. I was fortunate to be adopted out of that environment. So at 8 years old, I was with my, adoptive family, very loving um, lower socioeconomic family. So, that also spurs my drive from, a career and goal and aspiration perspective. But at 8, I was still incredibly I'm going to say a lack of confidence. I think a lot of my self-worth was shaken by the fact that I could be abused by the person who's supposed to care and love for you the most in my biological mother. And I was also very different. I was academically gifted. I was taller than, bigger than everyone else. So like you just everywhere I went, I sort of stuck out. And so 8-year-old was very quiet and observed the world around her. And so the extrovert you and your audience sees now is something I grew into because that was not the 8-year-old Victoria.
Very interesting and very sad that I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And of course, at such a young age. And uh, how do you reconcile that as a kid? Like I watched your TED talk, which is excellent, by the way, excellent. Like everybody, you gotta see your TED talk. And you said that like the last words that you heard from your mom. And then how do those words not just ring in your head? How did you how 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 as an 8-year-old did you have the tools, the wherewithal, the whatever to have some resilience, to be resilient at all?
I did, but not in what I now refer to as healthy resilience. So I think, flight or fight, I am a fighter. I think I always have been. So I think that to some extent, some of that is just DNA. And then I also think there's muscle you develop around being resilient. So I was a tough kid. I think I was able to deal with a lot, but I didn't process it. I just put it to the side and I focused on like the goals that I had. And then every once in a while there'd be a crack in that armor. And my mother, and my mom is my adoptive mother, the one who raised me, she was so wonderful at trying when she saw that, the chink in the armor, when she saw my reaction to things, or that I was standoffish and I'd keep people at a distance for fear of getting hurt. She'd be the one who sat me down, and my nickname was Tori growing up. And she's like, Tori, like we need to understand, why are you feeling this way? And she'd sit me down for hours, and it would drive me insane as a child. But some of what she taught me is now made me much more resilient in a healthy fashion. The ability to be very self-reflective, self-aware around why I have the emotions or the reactions I have, where do they come from, and then get back to sort of anchoring on more positive, mindset and like goals that I set for myself.
Wow. Wow. Well, sounds like your mom is a wonderful lady. And so that's really cool that's who you got. That's the family that got you and you got.
Yeah.
And because I don't know, as an 8-year-old kid, you should be playing kickball and just be out having fun with friends and using your imagination to make mud pies or whatever, right? I mean, it should be sort of a carefree time of life. But when you've suffered trauma at such a young age, it's not so carefree, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, I was now I have a very, very large social network and I enjoy being out and socializing. Back then, I had a very, very small group of friends, typically only one or two kind of close friends at a time. And I spent a lot of time by myself, an avid reader, and, so reading very adult, but I was reading Stephen King at that age, quite frankly. I know that that's probably a bit scary, but but I was reading those kinds of things and really focused on not my schoolwork. I was very fortunate it came easy to me, but like that's where I channeled my energy versus all of the things, as you said, you should be carefree and enjoying. Although I did enjoy my bike rides. Like there's a lot of things that sadly, many of our kids of today's generation miss because they're so attached to their phones. But so there was a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
I'm still very much like to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Stephen King, one of the greatest writers of our time. There's no doubt about it. So can't say as I blame you there. Is a little adult probably for an 8-year-old or whatever, but I don't know. I have a grandson who read the Harry Potter series when he was in first grade. So who knows? To each his own. But books, I would think would be such a blessing for you because it's an escape. You
Oh
know?
yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It was very much to like great to, escape to a different world versus sort of, sitting and not wallowing. Because like I said, I didn't process a lot of the emotion then, but just rather than being me and feeling different, feeling like I was an outsider to like get immersed in these, crazy tales through books.
Yeah, that's good. That's so cool. Did you have any idea when you were a kid? Like, did you look to the future and go, I want to,
I did.
what was
It's funny, probably from the time I was maybe 10, 11, I wanted to be a lawyer. But I jokingly say it's because I think my mom had me watch too much LA Law. Uh, back, like with I remember watching da all of her soap opera, like in nighttime shows from Dallas and those. And I was young, but like, so a lawyer. That's what I wanted to be. And my mom had said, to me, Tori, you need to do better than us. And she meant socioeconomically, vocationally. My mom was a secretary, my dad, a school janitor. And so she pushed. She didn't have to say that because that, like I said, my drive, my why comes from biology and circumstance. And so I was determined to be better than where I'd come from. And so being a lawyer was the path I, thought I was going to go down. And then, the best laid plans and getting into the business world, I ended up staying in there and never went to law school, but those were the plans.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But instead, you did get into the business world and achieved great things at a very young age.
Yeah, I started working at age 11, which I'm sure would not be allowed with today's child labor laws. Uh, and I worked in a hair salon doing everything except the actual hair. And then by 14, I was the assistant manager of the shoe store I worked at while I was in high school. And then I graduated high school a little early, so I was 16 and went off to university and was working in a bank in their contact center. It was flexible to work around my school schedule. Plus, I was a part-time actor on the side, and so it gave me all the flexibility. And that's how I discovered I loved the business world, and I got promoted extremely quickly through their ranks. And then subsequently, what I thought was going to be 1 year off before going to law school turned into never. Because again, I loved the work that I was doing. I was a leader of people at that point. And so quite frankly, I've never looked back. I live with a philosophy around no regrets. But I truly think that this is the path that I was meant to be on.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. There's a few words that you use that I really like. Unstoppable is one of them. But I want to hear your definition of unstoppable.
Yeah, unstoppable is I sign a majority of my social media posts with two hashtags, and one of them is unstoppable, the other is no excuses, and they're very connected. But that is for me, I'm never gonna let, challenge or adversity prevent me from achieving the goal or objective that I set for myself. You can't control all of the challenge that might come your way, but you're always in control. And this is the no excuses part. You are always in control of how you will react or respond, the choices you make. So it doesn't mean I'm saying we can't have feelings or emotions. Like I'm a highly emotional individual. I'm very quick to an emotion. I cry at the Humane Society commercials. And that's fine. It doesn't mean I don't feel that deeply. But then I make a choice in terms of how I'm going to move forward. How am I going to achieve that goal that I've set for myself? That for me is what being unstoppable is about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the no excuses like that's huge too. And so I I like what you said. I did this thing where I decided I was going to learn the true meaning of love. And
Mm.
so I dedicated a year to figuring it out. I was in Haiti most of the time. I took this 2,000-year-old poem: love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, whatever. You hear it at weddings, your eyes glaze over, you hear it so much. But I decided I'd take one word or phrase a month and figure out, well, what is love that is patient? What is love that is kind? Blew my mind, rocked my world, changed my life. Found out so many things about love that were taught wrong, really, about love, and how wonderful love is when you know what it really is. But one of the things in there is exactly what you're talking about. It was love keeps no record of wrongs. And
Mm.
when I was on that, I was dreading it. I thought, oh my gosh, you might forgive people, but you don't forget the things that happen to you. So what does it possibly mean? Love keeps no record of wrongs. But what it does mean is exactly what you said, that you don't choose the things always that happen to you. There are things that you don't control in life. We'd like to all, you and I, probably both type A, we probably have a lot in common. And we would like to control everything if we could. If there was a control, we would want to be on that right end of that. But we don't have a choice. In so many things, we don't have a choice, but we do control the way we respond, and we control the narrative. So, if somebody does you wrong, you can say, oh my gosh, that rotten person that did this rotten thing to me. Or you can say, yeah, that wasn't so cool, but I learned this from that, or whatever. You get to control the narrative instead of lashing back or wallowing in self-pity or whatever it happens to be. You can control the narrative, and you can control the narrative of things that have happened to you in the past too. You can change from, oh my gosh, I'm a victim. This has happened, to, okay, yeah, this crappy stuff happened, but what am I going to do with it? How am I going to change it around so that it can be something that helps me in my life instead of hurts me in my life? And but you got to get to the point where you want to do that. You
Mhm.
obviously learned young that this is what you could do, that you could move beyond, that you could change the way you looked at things, that you could kind of turn things around for yourself. What are your secrets to that? What do you think brought you to that? Why are you so good at it?
I for me it's very much about mindset. And to your point, like you make a choice. And so for me, I made a choice unknowingly, by the way. When I was a child, I wasn't consciously aware around the way I talk about it now. but that I was going to be different. I was not going to replicate, my biological mother or the circumstances of my adoptive family that, no, I never had to worry about food insecurity and having a roof over my head, but there was no money for anything else. I didn't get to go on school field trips, or we didn't do vacations. I think I did one or two ever, right? So my choice was to like do and achieve more then. And so it was just the mindset I had around that. I made some I'll say poor choice, or I learned, right? So I talk about the healthy resilience. I now have sort of steps I will coach people through, or I talk about in my TED talk around like the steps to healthy resilience, or, around understanding the goals. Be always, that's an anchor. Like, what's the goal you want? What do you want to achieve? Like, that's the anchor for you. And then being self-aware and self-reflective, surrounding yourself with great people, giving yourself permission to fail, those kinds of things. So uh, I didn't have aspects of that when I was young. And so for me, when it came to relationships and people, I think I anchored on a goal around schooling, around education, around work. I pushed people away. So it took me until my 20s because I was like, well, I'm making a choice to not get hurt. And I needed to choose love later, to your point, Kim. And so for me, I had to unlearn some of the behavior, protect what I believed was protective behavior for myself, and then keeping people at a distance or running away too quickly if I was concerned about getting hurt. So that came into like my late 20s and into my 30s, and it was in my early 30s where I think I really confidently stepped into that. And, I left a marriage, and then I was dating, and that, the person I was dating had an affair on me. And I started dating fairly soon afterwards. And I remember friends were like, how can you do that? Didn't he hurt you? And I'm like, yeah, but I choose love. And if I don't put myself back out there, like I'm not going to find it. And so, yes, poor stuff has happened, right? And so that for me is just that's the mindset I had unknowingly as a child, just anchored to those goals, and very knowingly now as an adult around the choices I make to surround myself with things that bring me both personal and professional joy and value. And so that's my philosophy, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting to me because it wasn't just what you went through before you were adopted, but you've gone through other hard times in your life. And so is this your healthy resilience? Has it just kind of worked for everything all the way along? Because you see some people that have a real hard time kind of getting on top of abuse or getting on top of grief or getting on top of something that has happened in their life. But you get on top of it. I'm sure it's painful and it takes a while to get there, but you're able to get on top of it. What do you think is, I know the goals, your steps are fantastic. I love them, but there's something within. There's something that has to start with your heart. That's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you're right. I've had it's funny, some people have said I should write like a memoir, and I'm just shy of 50, so I feel I'm a little too young to write a memoir yet. But if you heard that, maybe it should be a movie. If you understood a lot of the additional adversity and trauma, right? So my biological mother, I was like extremely ostracized as a child for being very gifted, for being by age 10 I was taller than my teacher. To I was raped at 14. My first marriage, to my partner who had cancer when I was 7, who developed cancer the first time when I was 7 weeks pregnant with my second. To workplace situations, to 40 mergers and acquisitions, more corporate restructure than I can count. Um, so in many cases, on those latter ones, I thrive in that kind of in a work situation. I do not like the status quo. I'm constantly trying to challenge myself. So when I think about all of the level of challenge or adversity, much of which I couldn't control, right? My biological mother being raped by a, second date or whatever, right? Those kinds of things. But again, getting back up and move forward. That's always been the choice for me. And so this very resilient, it takes a lot to flap me, like get me again quick to emotion on things, but like I'm very quick. I'm the one who I am calm, I will set a plan, I will move forward. And I actually think the fact that I've encountered this challenge and adversity time and time again in a variety of different contexts has made me like not only the person I am today, but the ability to lead others in that kind of environment because I can, talk to them about what I've experienced, steps that have worked, that have not, like how to, anchor themselves when the world is so chaotic around them.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. It's like unless you've gone through something yourself, it's so hard to relate. Like you can emphasize or you can empathize, you can have sympathy for somebody, you can feel like you feel it. But when you've actually gone through it yourself, you relate to people in a whole different way. And there's something just incredible to be said about that. I admire people who go through really hard times and end up using it to help other people, which is exactly what you do. So thank you. Kudos to you for doing what you do. And so I'd love you to talk about the steps slower because they're so valuable, they're so good. And it's something I think everybody could use. Everybody in the world needs to hear this.
Yeah.
So your healthy resilience.
Um, so the first one is to be very clear on the goal or objective for yourself. And we will have many across all dimensions, right? Whether it's around professional goals, financial goals, health, relationships, all of those. So be really clear on what it is you want. And then I use a phrase quite a bit around strategic intentionality. That then means that you need to be intentional around not just the actions, but the thoughts, the language, the behavior that you use or utilize to achieve those goals or objective. And then and this is one of the most important parts, I believe, is the self-awareness or self-reflection. So around like if we're not showing up, with the right again mindset, we're having, unnatural or uncomfortable responses to something, we're not achieving our goals, questioning why. Like why am I not there? So being very self-reflective and aware around the feelings, the emotions, the actions that you're taking. But then the next one is sometimes that is self-awareness and reflection is hard. And so surrounding yourself with community that will not only just support you in the goals that you have for yourself, but those who can identify the blind spots for you. I operate with radical candor, right? I work in professional services, and it's funny because many consultants will tell their clients what the clients want to hear versus what they need to hear. I'm a need to hear person. I'll be radically candid. I think you need those people in your community around you, the support system that are going to help you. If you've got a blind spot and you just can't see it, and whether that's your friend or family, or maybe it's a professional, right? Maybe that's what you need. And then the last step is however permission to fail. Like we're gonna stumble and we're gonna make mistakes, and that's life, and that's okay. Anchoring back when those failures occur, back to your goal. You stand back up, you dust yourself off, and remember, like, one foot in front of the other is progress. And so that's for me, that works in terms of how I process, how I deal with challenge or adversity. And ultimately, I'm now very much more healthy in the way in which I am resilient.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. Well, and everything that you just said, you were able to say in a couple minutes, but it really dives so deep in so many ways because it's not necessarily natural for everybody to do those things. Like goal setting, you just think, well, of course everybody sets a goal, but not everybody does set a goal. But how important it is to set a goal and what it does to your psyche, what it does to you internally, externally, like you mentioned, the way you kind of walk in it, right? The way you act to act in a way that your goal is achievable, to have the belief and have wherewithal, the drive to make that goal come true. So there's a bit to goal setting that uh, I'd love for you to talk about more, like
Yeah.
what people need, and talk about that walking in it and whatever.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a healthy balance of goals that challenge you, but then a level of like realism to the goals that you set. And particularly with the ones that are a little bit more challenging or lofty, that you recognize there's steps or paths you take that might be lateral to help you, get there. And so for me, I believe that growth and opportunity does not come unless you've stepped into your zone of discomfort. It is
Mm,
when you are in that place of discomfort, and that you press through it, that again, growth and opportunity comes. And so I would encourage people to set goals that might make them uncomfortable, yet at the same time are realistic. If you're, a morbidly obese person and you're setting a new health goal for yourself, well, like don't expect that you're losing 200 pounds in 6 months, right? Like, so there's a lot, that's what I mean, a little bit in terms of a level of realism, but again, and so what are the incremental steps that you're going to take to achieve that goal or objective for yourself? From a career perspective, it's like if you're an early professional, you're, just leaving college and you say, hey, someday I would like to be a CEO. Okay, well that's likely many, many years away, and so harder to plan. So let's start with what's the first step? You want to, be the subject matter expert, in the field that you're in, the highest level of individual contributor before you then move to like a leadership role. Like let's plan that out. And so that's what I'd say around goal setting. One that is lofty, makes you uncomfortable, but but it's also realistic to achieve in maybe the time frame or with multiple steps to get you there.
yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And like you said too, you have different goals in different areas of your life, so it doesn't have to be just one goal. Like I d- like a vision board, I guess, where you kind of look at every area of your life, your health, your bank account, your job, your relationships, all the different areas of your life and what you want. And I think too often we do aim low. Like I love that you talk about make it lofty, like make it uncomfortable, make it something that you go, gosh, can I? It just gives you a little bit of something, because it does make a big difference. Because it'd be so easy to go, well, yeah, I want to make $2 more an hour next year, or I don't know, whatever it would be. Well, you better. I mean, if you don't, holy cow, like something should happen, and you're aiming way too low. So aim high, shoot high. You don't get high until you do. If
Right.
you aim low, that's exactly what you're going to get. So aim high. I like that you said it in the way that you said it. So true. And but realistic. That also makes so much sense. That's so good. So that's the first part, is you have a goal. Now the self-reflection, that can
Mhm.
be really tough for people, right?
It can. It can. I think you know, it's hard work. It's hard work. That's why I think a lot of people fall into I'll call it like the victim trap. It's a lot easier to circle around oh, this has happened to me. Why is this always happening? Versus taking accountability and ownership. And again, you can't, doesn't mean you can control some of the stuff that's going to happen to you, but the ownership piece of it. I'll tell people like you're the CEO of your career, of your life. Like take charge. But to do that, I do think you need to be, very self-reflective. But again, it's hard work. I think of, I share an example of me early in my executive career. So I got promoted to be an executive at age 24. I was very young. It was a massive stretch role for me. I was a brand new mother. And although I don't think this is 25 years ago, I don't think the phrase imposter syndrome it was around as frequently then. But that would describe probably what I felt like. And I still hadn't gotten through the healthy resilience steps and the way I dealt. So I showed up with a mask, I'd say. At 24, I was the chief operating officer for a mid-sized company,
Wow.
and I was the only woman. I was the youngest by a couple of decades, and so I showed up like all business all the time, despite the emotional person I've told you I am. I wouldn't let anyone see that. And so I found out a few years later that I had a nickname as the Iron Maiden. And initially I was like, oh, well, I did think, I always thought it was unfortunate, but I thought it was more to do with the fact that I had to make really tough business decisions through restructuring and things like that. But it was a conversation I had with a colleague. I don't know how long after I'd heard that nickname. And I was talking about my weekend on a Monday morning coming into work. And I said I'd watched the movie in the theater and I was bawling. And, those little like popcorn sized napkins were like, and she turned and she's like, oh my God, Vic, I thought you'd be the type of person who laughed at people who cried at movies. I
Oh,
will tell you, Kim, that shattered me because that is not who I am. And so I needed to do the tough work of looking very closely at the woman that stared back at me in the mirror around, perception is reality, as they say. How was I showing up? That now I understood a little more around the Iron Maiden nickname. And I'm like, but it's not who I am. That's not who I wanted to be known for as a leader. And so I had to do a significant amount of reflection and understand. And that's where I started really processing the stuff as a child, right? I don't want to be vulnerable because I'm worried I'm going to get hurt or I'm worried people are going to look at me differently. I'm a young female executive. I am different, right? So for all those, so it's hard work to do the self-reflection. And all the stuff my mom did for me and sitting me down and saying, Tori, let's work through this. I got to unpack all of that and bring it out to help me then kind of, be more self-reflective and talk to the trusted people around me to also support me on that.
yeah. Wow. Wow. What a thing to come to and come to on your own, right? It's not like you were going to a coach who was saying, hey, Tori, this is what you have to do. And then do this step and then do this and look in the mirror and say, I love you, or, whatever it happens to be. But you figured it out on your own. That's pretty incredible. And then now help other people figure it out. But that's quite a thing to figure out on your own. Self-reflection can be really, really difficult. Sometimes the way we see ourselves is exactly like you said, and not the way other people see us. So
Hmm.
how do you want to show up? How do you want to be seen? How do you want to be perceived? And with that too, I would say comes taking responsibility, right? Like, what is your part in it? Something happens. Well, what's your part in it? Like I remember a piece of advice that I got years and years ago. I started my first business when I was 18, and so business has been my life. And a piece of advice I got years ago is whenever I had to let anybody go, which is not a comfortable thing to do, nobody ever wants to do that, to first look at yourself and go, wow, well, did I train him right? Did I give him all the tools that he needs? Did I hire him into the right position? Is this even where he should be? Is he uncomfortable in this position because this is not where his skill set lies? Should I move him to a different area of the company? Like all these things go through complete self-reflection, really look at what did I do? What's my part in it? And what I learned from that is to do that with everything. What's my part in it? It can be so easy to blame other people for everything and anything, but no matter what, where there's two people involved, you got a part in it. So what's your part in it? And reflect on that. And so self-reflection in so many ways, so important, not easy, but so important. So that's so good. So you have your goal, you are going through the steps and you get to self-reflection, then your next step in health and resilience.
Yeah, well, so it's goals and objectives. The strategic intentionality is the other one. So just around that is um, being really strategic around the steps you will take to achieve, not the steps you will take, the thoughts you will have, the language you use. It's all of those pieces. So being very intentional around the all of the pieces to achieve the goals. And then it is the self-reflection. To some extent, you can reverse those two. But I do think you need to be really like planful around how you were going to achieve whatever that goal or objective is. And like I use some of the career examples. Like I talked to, there's a colleague I work with who, like very recently, and so she said she wants, I work in a technology consulting context right now, and she wants to be the chief information officer, the CIO for an organization someday. And I like, I'd hate to not see her at our organization, but I had to say like let's talk about the steps to get you there. You're not going to make the leap from where you are in our organization to be the CIO. You're going to have to go to industry, meaning to a client, likely at the level below, operating before you then move to there. So let's talk about what those steps, take. So that's a career one, but it's the same around whether you think about relationships. I use my example. I, had a boyfriend who had an affair on me, and I'm like, well, I'm going to put myself back out there and I'm going to do this. And so, but how am I going to do that? Right. Like, so that's really important, I think, to be very, again, strategic and intentional about what you're going to do to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. And, and then practicing it, that's like the intention piece. So for me, my Iron Maiden that I was trying to shed that perception people had, well, that meant I had to show up very different every day. So even that for me was I'm going to walk into business meetings, and instead of diving straight into the business agenda, I'm going to take 5 minutes at the opening of each call or meeting to engage in a little bit of chit chat and banter. Tell me about, your what did you do this weekend? Talk to me about your family, right? The things that bring connection. That now I do that so naturally, it's like innate. It drives my husband crazy because I talk to strangers in elevators, like, but that kind of level of small talk was not natural for me. So again, I talk about putting myself in my zone of discomfort. I needed to be intentional about showing up differently. So I had to do something that was not natural or comfortable for me. And so I opened up meetings like that, right? To starting to talk a little bit more about my emotions and my backstory. I didn't tell people openly around my early traumatic childhood. I was embarrassed by it. I didn't want people to treat me or think of me differently, and so I didn't. The floodgates opened when I started being open and vulnerable, like for people to understand why I'm as driven as I am, you need to understand that's where I came from. Right. So that's a very big part of this strategic intentionality and the steps you take every day, again, in your zone of discomfort to help you achieve the goal you've set for yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Yeah, and isn't it true? Like we live in this world that's sometimes opposite of what we think. We think that, oh gosh, if people know this about us, then they're going to think this and it's a bad thing. And instead, they're going to think this and it's a good thing. Like so many things can be just so opposite that way. And I would think it would have to be so freeing to not kind of be hiding behind anything, but to say, hey, this is who I am. Here I am, and take me or leave me, right? But this
Yeah.
is who I am. So that's pretty cool. So then we're still going to the next step then. So after that, then of course self-reflection, and then the next step that you need to do.
That's building the community around you, right? So which needs to be a very different mix. I think, we often surround ourselves with people who are very like us. And I think you need an incredible like diversity around you of perspective, of experience. Of course, you want to find you want your family and friends around you that just are going to love you regardless when you mess up, right? Like you need those people who are there all of the time, but you need people who come with different perspectives and experience, who um, can again identify blind spots for you, who can talk about how they maneuvered through challenges to achieve their goals and objectives, so which might be similar, but they might be different, but that tangentially, what are the pieces that we can bring? And so I think you need to find that very diverse mix around you. Like I good example in a business context, I always say you need to have coaches, mentors, and sponsors. And so your coaches are like those who will help make you better in how you perform, It's usually your manager or supervisor, but not always. The mentor, that's actually where I say go wide in terms of like diversity, in terms of experience. It's not even just someone like more hierarchical in the organization. Maybe it's someone who like is in a very different business function or who's worked in a different country and can talk about, those different aspects. And then the sponsor, that's someone who advocates for you when you're not in your room. Like I think all of those. And so again, that's in a business context. But I think if you think just in a holistic life, context, you need that kind of diversity of experience, of those who just love you unconditionally, those who challenge you greatly, those who have very different experiences, just to open your mind to different perspective. You need that around you. And as I said earlier, I do think if you need it, depending on the traumas, the adversities, the challenge, find professional help, right? Whether that is a psychologist, psychiatrist, or maybe that's a career coach, a life coach, an accountability coach, right? Like sometimes you need a professional if you're not immediately finding it in like the friends and family or work colleagues around you.
Yeah, so true. So true. Everybody's got whatever leadership style they have. And I find it very interesting to look at presidents and how they lead. And when they're the president that realizes that they don't want to be the smartest guy in the room, but they want the strong people around them because it makes everybody stronger when you surround yourself with strong people, better people. Or there's a kind of leadership where you want to be the smartest guy in the room, and then you don't surround yourself with as smart of people. And to me, that can be so damaging. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to know that there's people that know more than I do and that can help me along the way. And as I go through things, that maybe they've already been there and they can lean on their experience and share that with me to get through whatever it happens to be or to learn from whatever it happens to be. And so it's interesting because through life too, you work with different bosses, you work with different people that come with different styles. And so, but you got to hold your own ground and say, well, this is what I want. I need that diverse group of people
Yeah.
around me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. I love that. Yeah. So then there's one more step.
Yeah. So that's the give yourself permission to fail.
Mhm.
Um, I think fail and pivot. I'll even add, the pivot piece. It's okay to change your goal as as you evolve, as you grow, as you change, but permission to fail along the way. So again, I'll take the like health or weight loss journey. Okay, so you've got you're on a mission. Your goal is to get healthy, to lose weight. Well, sometimes you're gonna fall off the diet, and but here's where I'll say, and I'm not, my husband's sort of a health expert. I'm not, but so I wouldn't be coaching someone on this necessarily, but I'd probably say like build yourself a plan that includes some treats every now and again. Like depriving yourself is no fun, so build that in. But maybe you have a plan and like again you fall off it. You have that dessert one day. Okay, so like let's not beat ourselves up. We're not abandoning our goal because we made one mistake. And so again, we pick it up the next day. We go back to like the healthy, routine. And I find too many people, it's quick to abandon our goals because we fail. And then we see many people just see themselves as a complete failure versus recognizing there was one error, there was one misstep, and we can get back to it. Uh, but then also with that is that the permission to pivot or change goals. I think about a couple of things for me. I said my goal was to be a lawyer when I was young. Well, I got into the business world and I realized I really enjoyed it. So although it had been my goal since a childhood to be one, I abandoned that, but because I found a passion for something else. And so again, that's okay. Like let's not beat ourselves up, for that. Also, my definition of success like changed dramatically. A lot had to do with self-awareness, self-reflection, self-love. Because of where I came from. For me, definition of success, a lot, I was anchored so deeply on my career, being that, and achieving the level like hierarchically, but with that generally comes more money, and with that means material possession. So at one point, I identified success with those things. But like when I think of when my ex, got cancer, and by the way, we had just separated and gotten divorced, and then my ex contracted cancer again and passed away. And so my children were left, with one parent. And some of those things, I'm like, you know what? Like, as they said, the saying, your health is your wealth. But also, when I thought about work, I'd achieved high, I'd been a president and C-suite. Um, and so it wasn't about material possessions. I'd proven that I was better than where I came from. And so my focus shifted to, the fact that I want to be known for raising two really good human beings in my children, right? I want to be that different kind of leader. So again, the goal that I set in my 20s, very different than when I got into my 30s and much different now in my late 40s, almost 50. And so that's part of that permission to fail, permission to pivot or change as you evolve and grow.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense because I think you're absolutely right. There are times when people uh, jump off the wagon, whatever, make a mistake, and then that's it. Then they can't go back because they made a mistake. So that's it. Instead of going, well, that's just a mistake along the route. That's not the whole route. Like there's still plenty ahead to go. And so having that permission, and permission, I think, is such a powerful word to use because we can be the hardest ones to give ourselves permission for anything, right? Even permission to grieve or permission to sit in what you're feeling or whatever, but also permission to pivot, permission to fail. My word, some of the most successful people ever in history have gone bankrupt and then ended up with more money than we can imagine, than they could imagine at the time. And so failure, it's an interesting word to me because so often it really isn't failure. It's a lesson. It's a something. Maybe it didn't go quite right, something that didn't go quite right, but it's not, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just
Exactly.
this one thing didn't go right. And so I love the way you say it. You just put it in great terms and it makes so much sense. And your whole path to healthy resilience is so good because there are things within your path that I think are missed in so many other people who talk about resilience or try to act in resilience. They miss some of the very key components that you're talking about. So I love your definition. It's the best I've ever heard. And it just makes so much sense. Follow those steps and do all of them. Like don't skip something.
Right.
Make sure that you do it all. Yeah. So somebody's going through something right now. What's your biggest piece of advice for them? Or they've gone through something in life and they need to flex their resilient muscles.
It so I would say as much as I will acknowledge for myself, innately there's some DNA in me that has helped me be resilient. I do think it is like a muscle as well, and you can build it, you can develop it, but it takes practice and it takes time. So for those who are experiencing it right now, like feel the emotion, the grief, the pain, the anger, the whatever, like feel it, but in building your muscle, you need to do things again that are going to be uncomfortable and you need to do it over and over and over again. And so that as further challenges come down later, you'll be, in a much better position, to deal with what those look like. So that goes back to my phrase, strategic intentionality. Like, so just you need to be intentional. The stuff's going to come, feel it, live it, but then be intentional about how the choices you make and how you move forward.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. And I like that you talk too about some transparency, right? To be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable. You don't have to be the Iron Maiden that it's just all work and nothing else. I think that's a direction that leadership should go more, is that you should lead with love. Love used to be part of our everyday everything. And now it's like we leave it at home when we go to work sometimes. And it's like, well, you can't, because really love is who you are. And how you decide to show up in it at work is how you decide to show up in it at work, but it's still part of who you are. So to care about people and to say, hey, how was your weekend? How was your kids' t-ball game? Whatever it is, there's something about that, about being human with people, that you end up working better together as well. Did you
Yeah.
find that when you changed your way of going into meetings?
Oh, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, people do business with people they like and they trust. And so trust is a really big part of that. And so being vulnerable builds trust. And so I found, when I entered the workforce, I mean, the style for most was this command and control, and those in their ivory towers, and you just followed. And so my Iron Maiden was born a little bit out of that as well. And so people followed me, but I don't think at that point they would have followed me into the proverbial fire, into some of the more difficult. So for me, success has been I have team members who have followed me from organization to organization because we've built great relationships. And far too many leaders are focused on the things I was early on. All business, all the time, we're going to achieve business results. Well, people quit leaders, they don't quit companies. And so we need to be more accountable as leaders to building the trusted relationships. But that's only going to come with the investment of time, of emotion, of genuine interest, and care for those that we're fortunate to lead. And so again, that means showing up very differently. And for those that are of a different generation, again, entering the workforce, it's not what we saw. So it's not natural, it's not comfortable. But I will tell you, for me personally, when I, lifted off the like armor and started showing up differently, like the relationships that, I've built, and by the way, it's not just for my team, it's the same with my clients. Like, I'm not there just to sell you something. Ideally, that's going to happen, but like, let me build a genuine relationship with you from a place of care, from a place of compassion. And if all works out, we'll do business together.
Yeah, yeah, so interesting. I always think there's a couple of things when you're working with clients that are true tales that tell exactly how you're actually feeling, how you are showing up authentically, or are you just in it for the money? And one is, if you can say to them, you don't need to buy this. This isn't the right thing for you. And if you can never do that because it's all about sales and you're selling people something they don't need, that's not good. That's not being authentic at all. So I think that is definitely a sign. And so there are ways to check yourself and to know if where you're coming from. The place that you're coming from is so vital, so important. And people know. I mean, if somebody's authentic or not, if somebody really cares, or if they're just sending you a fruit basket, whatever. So yeah, so it's important to show up that way. Yeah, great advice. That's all so good. How can people get in touch with you? How can people work with you? What are you doing in life? Can we go have lunch sometime? I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. The best way to connect with me, the one-stop shop is my website, which is just victoria-pelletier.com. I'm sure that'll be in your show notes, so they don't need to figure out the spelling of my last name. And then from there, they can link out whether it's LinkedIn, it's Facebook, or Instagram. Although my youngest tells me that I'm old because I'm still on Facebook, number one, and two, I'm not on TikTok. And I'm like, we're really on Snapchat. I'm like, I've made my choices. But so go to my website. They can like follow me and connect with me on many of the other platforms.
That's good. That's good. So what's life hold for you? What are you looking forward to?
Ah, um, so goals or objective I've set for myself. I'd like to go back to being a CEO someday. I'm back in a big public company as an executive, but goal to go back to being CEO of a company. So when that is, I'm not sure. And continue to sit on boards, both public and not for profit. I tend to give back through some of the things I'm passionate about from a not for profit standpoint. And one that I'm not totally in control of, but I really hope for is someday I do want to be a grandmother. Although I was a young mother by choice. So I have told my kids, don't make me a young grandmother by accident. However, I would really like to be a grandmother. Again, that one's not totally in my control, but those are some of the aspirations.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I can tell you it's the greatest thing ever.
Uh,
Like I remember when I had my first child, my daughter, I was my oldest. I've got 5 kids. And when my daughter was born, I everybody would say ahead of time, oh my gosh, just wait till the baby comes. And you're like, oh, I already love the baby. What do you mean? And then when she was born, I was like, did my mom love me like this? Like the love that you have, right, is just so overwhelming. Well,
Yeah.
the same thing with being a grandparent. People will say, oh, just wait. And you're like, I'm a parent. I know. I can't wait. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Oh, no, 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 no. That feeling that you had when you gave birth the first time is times 10.
Ah,
I can't explain it, but it is the greatest thing in the world. And I'll tell you, it's wonderful to see. It's fun to see your kids grow up and the decisions they make and who they end up with, what they end up doing, what they decide their life is going to look like. It's fun to
yeah.
see that. It's fun to see your grandkids do the same thing. It's just kind
Yeah.
of cool to see. And the other thing about grandkids, I'm way off topic here, but just so you know, because someday this can happen to you, is I kind of think of it as like a dog. Like I have a dog and he runs to the door when I come home. Like he can't wait to see me. That's what grandkids do. They run to the door. They can't wait to see you. They laugh at my jokes, even if they're
Ah,
not funny. My
yeah.
kids don't laugh at my jokes, but my grandkids will laugh at my jokes. They just think the sun rises and sets on me sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. You
Yeah.
guys just keep thinking that way. That's all right. I'm cool with that. So
It's
it's
awesome.
so fun. Yeah, it is so fun. Victoria, you are amazing. Everybody, go to her website, watch the TED Talk. I'm telling you, outstanding. And everything that you've learned today, everything that you've gotten from today, you probably know people who could hear what Victoria had to say today, pass this episode on to them, reflect on it. Like this is really, really good stuff that you don't get everywhere because you don't get Victoria everywhere. And I so appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you do for people and the wisdom that you're just so willing to give away for free. And so thank you so much for who you are.
Thank you. It's great.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And I just pray that until we see each other again, that you keep your heart open and you live your love loud.